Date with a Debut is recorded and produced on Awabakal country, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show.
When I look back, it's been 10 years now since the Dry was picked up for publication. So 2015, I got my publishing deal for the Dry, and I started writing it the year before in late 2014. And then it came out in 2016. So this is a big kind of decade anniversary really for me, this kind of time. And it's been a really incredible 10 years.
Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you're looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. It really helps the show out. If you also want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Wherever you are listening, thank you for listening to us and supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Well, welcome to Debut Revisited, a special series on Date with a Debut where I sit down with authors several books into their career and discuss their entire writing journey from debut to the present day. And for our final episode of the year and of this special series, I'm delighted to welcome Jane Harper. She's a multi-award-winning author of international bestsellers, The Dry, Force of Nature, The Lost Man, The Survivors, and Exiles. Her books have been published in over 40 territories, more than 3.5 million copies sold, while The Dry and Force of Nature have been adapted into 2 amazing motion pictures starring the one and only Eric Bana. And The Survivors has since been adapted into a miniseries on Netflix. And we're here today to talk about her career all the way through to her brand new book, Last One Out, which is published by Macmillan Australia. Coming to us all the way from beautiful Naarm this morning, Jane, welcome to Debut Revisited.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here.
It's so lovely to see you again. It's been a couple of years. We're just literally talking about it offline since we've last seen each other. I think last time was The Survivors. And of course, at the time of us recording, it's 10th of October, getting into mid-October, but just before the release of Last One Out, your brand new book. By the time everyone's listening, it'll be out in the world. It'll be there for people to read and enjoy. Out of curiosity, how are you feeling? Do you still get nervous before release day now that you're a few books deep, or is it a case of been there, done that, or are you excited?
Do you know, I think it is a little bit of a different experience, I think, each time. I think after 6 books, I'm now at the point where I can enjoy it without feeling the nerves that maybe I felt in the first few. When you're first starting out, it's all so new and everything is like a completely fresh experience, and you don't really know what to expect. And being out there and kind of being face to face with readers who are brand new to you and brand new to the books is an exciting experience. But there are a few nerves involved. Whereas now I feel like I know. I know my readers and they know me, and I know the process, and I really enjoy it. So I think excitement is kind of the main thing there. But it never gets old. It's every single time. It's just a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's so funny that if it comes a moment of excitement, the more you get used to it, the more you feel it. And also, a great point you make there, when you get readers who really start to enjoy and latch onto your books, the ways that you can play their heart like a heartstring a little bit. But before we do a deep dive into your amazing bibliography, let's back chat. And I kind of am a bit of a slave to the formula with Debut Revisited, and it's going to seem like such a basic softball opener. You're Jane Harper, print journalist for 13 years, one of Australia's, not to blow your trumpet a little bit too much, but one of Australia's leading crime writers. Your ability to evoke the Australian landscape is amazing. How the hell did that happen? How did you get to this point?
Do you know, when I look back, it's been 10 years now since the Dry was picked up for publication. So 2015, I got my publishing deal for the Dry, and I started writing it the year before in late 2014, and then it came out in 2016. So this is a big kind of decade anniversary, really, for me. This kind of time, and it's been a really incredible 10 years. And I think maybe that partly answers your question. I think part of it is possibly as boring as consistency. You know, you get the break, which is incredible. I mean, it's just so wonderful to have someone open that door and say, yes, we will publish your book. But then there is the day after and the year after, and you know, you've got to kind of get back to the desk, I think, and continue finding what you love about writing that drove you to write that first novel, and find it again and again and again, with, you know, slightly different slightly different circumstances, like, you know, like maybe a contract, deadlines, things that you possibly didn't have for the debut. So it's about, I think, capturing that love of it and adapting it to a new sort of way of writing professionally.
Well, let's dive into it. Let's go straight into this amazing career you've had. And I think in the interest of, you know, considering we have so many books to talk about, we're going to start with the Aaron Falk trilogy, if I can. The main character in your debut story, The Dry, as well as Force of Nature, Exiles. I took the sacrilege approach. You know, my experience with I remember my first interaction with your book was actually The Survivor. With you and your writing style was The Survivors, and I took the sacrilege approach, and I saw the film first before I read the book, which was a very, very strange experience with The Dry. I've never done that before with any other thing before. And one of the things, I mean, it's one of the things we kind of talked about a little bit that I adore about your writing, even more so than the crime, the whodunit nature that kind of comes out in stories like this, is your use of setting, and also how the challenges, themes, and tropes of your characters intertwine with setting. It's something I look forward to in all of your books. And here in The Dry, which it's still amazing that this book is 10 years old. It really genuinely is. That kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's all there. Does that make you feel weird now that it's like, oh, that was 10 years ago? Because like it blows my mind a bit.
A little bit. It does feel like yesterday at the same time. Like it feels like, I mean, 10 years is yeah, it does. I can't quite believe it. It still feels like it came out really quite recently, I have to say. And look, you know, and also I do want to say, I don't let me absolve you of any guilt you may feel about seeing the film before reading the book. I think I actually quite often, if I come across people who haven't discovered the books, I do sometimes say to them, you know, you can watch the adaptations and see if you kind of like the style and feel, because I do feel the adaptations, you know, the Dry particularly, being the one we're talking about, were very close, and I think they capture the books and the character of them very well. So I think it's a good way to kind of maybe test the waters and see if you'd like to kind of delve a little bit deeper by reading the novel.
Yeah, it's great you mentioned that, actually. I think you're absolutely correct that the actual video, the film adaptation is very, very close to the story, and it captures the feeling, the energy of the story very, very well. I mean, this is a book that, I mean, usually I kind of like to do the classic elevator pitch for every book at the start, but obviously with The Dry, it's so etched. It's over 1 million copies sold. It's kind of very much a story that people are quite familiar with. This is a book that, you know, sees Aaron travel down deep, dark paths of memory. There's tension among so many characters, and it mirrors this town, Keighery. It's a brutal, unrelenting place, suffering, trauma, and drought in many forms. Maybe the reason why I connected with this one so much is I grew up in country New South Wales myself, and folks, you know, at this current point in time, often complain about how much rain we're getting. And I often say in my head, I take that any day of the week over the unrelenting dread that of it being dry, with no rain, with no drought. That folks, it's that feeling that you evoke, that folks growing up in the country know all too well, that desperate desire for just any rain, those drops of rain, the fact that everyone is barely scraping by and is on the verge of snapping. Like, that's the kind of environment that this book really captures. And then there's the ever-present danger of fire, that it could all suddenly go up in an instant. Talk to me about setting. Talk to me about your love of setting, because I feel like if going to do a deep dive like this, it's a key part of Jane's writing, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, the setting has become such a crucial part of the whole writing process for me. You know, I think of the setting really early on when I'm thinking about the plots. The setting is probably the next thing, even before the characters. I'm thinking about what is a setting that would kind of really support an idea for a story like this. And I like to have a setting that can be kind of woven through the book in the sense that it drives the mystery. Ideally, it's part of the crime. You know, it's part of the crime that kind of launches the whole book. It also informs who the characters are. They're people who are kind of that setting. They're either really entrenched, they're really shaped by it, or they're maybe brand new to it and are kind of a fish out of water. But either way, they are impacted by the setting, and I like to have the setting kind of play a part. To the degree that by the end, you look back and you think, yes, that book couldn't have been set anywhere else.
It definitely feels like that with the Dry, because there's another deep thing which we'll kind of get into a little bit, which is you really like to examine memory, and you like to examine guilt, you like to examine trauma in a lot of these stories. And I think it's not just a key part of natures of crime genre. I think there's a way you go about it in a particular way that is very enjoyable. But the crux of this series, and particularly for the Dry, is this character of Aaron, who is such a great character in these series of stories. We get a character in the Dry with the past bubbling under the surface, but he is now, and it's kind of almost in a way defined how he has become the person that he is, and now he's coming back to this world and to this place that he kind of had left in a previous life, forgotten, and using his skills he has learned to try and, in a kind of way, figure out what happened in this particular, in one particular case, but also another particular mystery from years gone by, which made him leave this town. In Force of Nature, we see him in his element a little bit more. Like he's he's more investigator, he's more detached from the current events, but he also has things in his own life that are colouring the picture, with his late father and the events that happened in the Ranges in that particular story. His relationship with Carmen, which is filled with so much tension, a bit of an emotional, a romantic element even to it a little bit. And then Exiles, I think the best way I kind of tried to feel like with Aaron is that he's a bit more weary in that story, because the chances, he's there for the christening of his godson, Greg Recco's child Henry, and the chance to make happy memories in this beautiful kind of more picturesque element of Australia. But it comes with that story even comes with strings itself, as he's now tasked with trying to find out what happened to Kim. And in that story, Aaron is he's desperate to break this cycle that he finds himself in, to be present, to not let the weight of past and responsibilities of the role that he's not trying to let all of this past stuff and his role define him so much. He's weary with that. There's a particular great quote from Exiles you say, which is, the little things you could have done differently, that was the stuff that haunted you, which I think really nails Aaron and really nails him across this amazing story. And his story is amazing. Obviously, it's been 3 years since the publication of Exiles. Out of curiosity, where does Aaron sit for you? Because you've been closer with him more than anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved writing about him, and I mean, I feel like I owe him so much. He was with me since the very start of like page one of the Dry, and he was, when I was writing that debut, and it was kind of, I was sort of finding my way through it. I mean, he was kind of the kind of the guiding light, really, building this story around him as a character, and helping me kind of guide the reader through. We were both sort of trying to find our way, really, to the end of this first book, and then the beauty, I guess, of having a recurring character is that you do get to kind of build these stories around them. So you get to kind of take what you've had before and then develop it, which I sort of try to do with each book, and particularly then with Exiles, which I went in knowing really that was going to be the last book for him, and I built that entire kind of story around him to kind of give him a kind of satisfying ending that he deserves, and kind of really celebrates I think who he is, give him a sort of a conclusion that I felt was sort of right for him as a as a character, as a sort of person that he's sort of become in my own mind. And it is like quite bittersweet because, I do really love him and he's given me so much. But at the same time, I think I wanted to give him kind of a closed, like a really thought out sort of sense of closure, rather than maybe push the character beyond where I felt it could go and into books and scenarios that I felt probably weren't really realistic for him.
I think that's it. It comes together very naturally with Aaron. I think he's the lens for a lot of the key parts of these particular stories, and he's the kind of that character that you identify with. And I think what is particularly great about Aaron is, and it's going to sound like such a cliche, but I think it's not just the fact that he's brilliant at what he does. It's the fact that there's so much weight to him. He's human. It's not just a case of the brilliant detective who can read a room like a book. I mean, as much as he can. There's a huge emotional element that drives through him with all of those stories. And the best part, and I think this is one of the reasons why I really also had a strong enjoyment of Exiles, because you kind of found it felt like the natural endpoint for him. Even though, and I know this is probably a mild spoiler, but there were one or two things which felt like it was open to another story with Aaron. But even if it does happen, I'm still happy that if this is the end, I don't mind that though, because it's such a great place for him.
Do you know what? And look, I mean, never say never. I mean, I do think this is. I do sort of approach this Exiles as being the last one, and it was kind of fully written with a sense of this could be it. Like, I mean, I didn't want to kind of be, sort of on the fence and one foot in, one foot out. Like, this was sort of, I sort of put everything in there, left, kind of nothing sort of like everything, so left everything on the field, I guess, for this one. Because but at the same time, I mean, the reality is, I mean, if I had a great idea for a story that could only be told by him, and I mean, who knows, it could happen, there's where it was like, this would be worth like bringing him back and seeing where he is in life now, and this would be a story that was told, could only really be told by him. Then, I mean, I would absolutely consider it. I mean, I'm not sort of nothing sort of set in concrete forever, I guess, when it comes to creative stuff. But I think it is good. It was good for me, I think, to approach this book feeling like, I could put it all into this book and really bring it to a natural end, certainly for this point.
I feel like we did jump over for Force of Nature a little bit here, kind of in our conversations and chats with Aaron, because naturally, of course, you gravitate to where we last saw him. But as much as The Dry was kind of the gateway into this amazing series, I do love the contrast that we kind of see across these stories, particularly in Force of Nature. While The Dry is a setting Aaron has a lot of connections to, Force of Nature, it's a bit more compartmentalized. It starts with 5 women, exiting their office setting to go out into kind of that into a team building exercise. They're outside of an air-conditioned comfort zone. They're trying to encourage teamwork and resilience. And the key thing for me was, unlike the other books in this series, it kind of stands out a little bit in this trilogy as a little bit of the black sheep, because these are people not familiar with this environment, which means these are people unfamiliar with the Gillalong Ranges, which makes this story much more suspenseful, which makes the story much more creepy than its predecessor. And I think it also fits in nicely with kind of the events around Daniel Bailey in the background, which we won't get into for spoilers. Whereas, Exile sees a comparison with a more picturesque, stereotypical area of Australia, South Australian wine country. There's actually, funnily enough, a bit more joy associated with place in Exiles, I found initially.
I agree,
It's because and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more when we talk about The Lost Man, which, I mean, just ekes off a couple more trope-laden natures of the Australian environment. But one of these things that I think really is great about Force of Nature is that it leans into kind of a lot of the established ideas around the Australian landscape, how the sheer size of it, the scale of it, the labyrinth element of it is what contributes to the fear. Whereas Exiles is a place where there's a lot more joy, but it's weighed down by Kim's absence, which I think is a beautiful setting for where Aaron is. He wants to experience joy in his life, but he's weighed down by the past. getting in the, I mean, and this is kind of, it alludes to a point that you kind of made when we were talking about the dry a little second ago, but this is what's great about a lot of your stories. It's the thing that I kind of enjoy as much as the crime element, which is your juxtaposition of character and the mirroring through place. Kind of talk to me about that, how you do that a little bit, because what is great about that is that you show so many different sides of Australia through that sort of method of dovetail of the place, but also the impact that place has on people.
Yeah, and I think the setting is, yeah, it is really crucial in that. It was interesting because when the the dry came out, in terms of that being my debut, I kind of had a choice to make at that point as to what the second book was going to be, and probably the maybe easier, more natural option might have been to just revisit Aaron Falk in this town. Have kind of a direct sequel where he is in Keighery. He's kind of reforging relationships with people we've met in the first book. There's maybe another mystery to solve, and that was and I did consider that, is that sort of the book I want to write. But I honestly think if I had written that book, I'm not sure we'd be sitting here now 10 years on, 6 books in, because I knew at the time, even that early on, I knew I would not be able to sustain that as a series. There wasn't enough in it. There wasn't enough interest in it for me as a writer to kind of flesh that out anymore. I felt that story had been told. So I really wanted to kind of put him somewhere different, which is how Force of Nature was born. And that was in the real kind of lush, dense, wet, cold, wintry bushland. It was funny actually when they filmed Force of Nature. I have so much gratitude to the film team who made that really wonderful film, but I have never heard so much complaining from people about what they went through to film that film. I've literally never had a conversation with anybody involved in that film where they have not mentioned how hard it was and how wet and cold they were and the leeches. So they really went through it. So which I think I quite liked, as someone who wasn't there, who wasn't sort of having to go through that myself. I quite like it that the setting really did kind of play into it to such a degree that they had that experience for themselves. And then you're right, as you touched on with Exiles as well. I really wanted for that book, because it was the third one, and I said again, as I kind of wanted to have this sort of sense of closure, I did want that sort of sense of joy in it as well. Even though the characters in the book are going through something quite traumatic, and there is this underlying sense that there is light and dark, but there is that light there, and there is kind of a bit of happiness there to be found if they can kind of grasp it.
Yeah, and it's great how much that impacts things. I think off the back of kind of the adaptations, I had this question a little bit for later, but I think I'll ask it now. Obviously, off the back of the success of these books, 2 of them have been adapted, The Dry into a hugely successful film, similar Force of Nature, which came out relatively recently. For those eagle-eyed fans, in The Dry, you can catch a certain Jane Harper cameo in there as well. In there as well. It's so funny. I was chatting with I think it was Holden Shepherd. He did a cameo in Invisible Boys, and then also similarly seeing Holly Ringland when in The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart. Just it never ceases to make me laugh, just seeing people that you've run into suddenly just appear as a character in the background. Just going, but people who know, they know. But this is a good chance to ask about the process of adaptation, if I can, seeing your baby in new clothes. And the reason why I want to particularly ask that is I don't think across multiple different types of medium, I don't think I've ever seen an individual so protective of a character as Eric Bana is of Aaron Falk. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just from the way he acts and inhabits Aaron, the weight to him. He kind of really narrow. He makes that brilliant. He rides that line brilliantly. Whenever now, when I read Exiles, I didn't have metaphorical previous Aaron in my head. I had Eric in my head, and I don't think I've ever seen someone so protective of a character. Talk to me about the process of seeing your baby come to life.
Oh, look, and isn't Eric Bana so wonderful in that role? I think he has captured it so beautifully. I think the kind of proof of that is in the way the readers absolutely embraced him. There's always kind of, I think in any adaptation, there's always kind of the tendency, as a reader myself, to compare the description of the book with the character on screen. And, very rarely do they sort of really coincide perfectly. Well, never really with your own imagination, because you've always, everybody pictures someone different. But the way that I think readers absolutely immediately kind of embraced Eric Bana in this role was so beautiful to see. I mean, it was, when I found out he was playing was interested in playing the role, the director Robert Connolly, we went out for coffee and he said, we've got someone, look, he's really interested, he's read the book, we think he'd be great, we just want to kind of know what you thought. And I mean, I don't have the power of veto. I mean, they can choose who they want, but I think it's better for them if I'm happy. And I remember him saying Eric Bana, and I could not believe it. I there was no part of me that thought he was A, going to say anybody I recognized, and B, going to say someone that I think immediately I was like, oh my God, yes. Like I could see it straight away. And he did such a great job in those roles. I think, like I've loved the film. And like we were saying earlier, I think it's really great to have an adaptation out there that you as an author, you can point people to and say, enjoy it. Like, feel free to read, watch it before you read the book if you like. It's very close. It kind of captures the spirit of it really well, and just be able to kind of enjoy the process, I think.
Well, the whole casting of the movie was amazing. The one that always really stands out to me as well is Matt Nable, who just embodies that kind of blokey, kind of aggressive, town environment. If there's any character that really embodies the town that's on the edge of snapping, it's him. And of course, the conflict with him and Aaron in that story is just, both on the page and on the screen, is just, it's so frustrating, but also it's so loaded and filled with depth. I have a bit of a unique opportunity here before we kind of move on to your standalone books, if I can, because I kind of asked a similar question in our previous episode with Tikas Gurma. It's very difficult to be, there's so many authors out there in the world, and it's few ever kind of have that book that goes on all around the world, becomes a bestseller, becomes successful, tops the New York Times bestsellers list, you and done all of the amazing things that it's done. And you've been with Aaron in these stories and this series for so long. How does one as an author process success of these books after you kind of, and also specifically, what challenges come with hitting the proverbial end of the rainbow and finding that success? Yeah,
I think I think partly it's a bit like the frog in the pot, with the water slowly boiling, in a good way. I think in that it doesn't just all happen at once. So it's not like I kind of woke up 10 years ago and then suddenly I'm catapulted into my life now. Like it's been a process, and I've done those, when a dry came out, I've done those sort of tours where you go and do like a million sort of small events, like bookshops for like 15 pensioners at a coffee morning who don't know who you are, but are happy to come along and support the bookshop and hear a nice new author sort of chat about their book, and then all the way through to kind of the tour I'm doing now, which is kind of major venues and sold out events and things. But it's been, there are steps along the way to that, So at each time you have a book out, you learn so much. I mean, about the writing process. My process has refined with each book. Then you learn about the process around the publication. So what is involved? What will be the expectations in terms of media and tour commitments, and what kind of interactions will there be with readers? You get to know a little bit more about maybe what the readers want to hear and what they're kind of hoping to get out of, hearing you talk about a book live and getting their book signed and things like that. So it all kind of builds up, and it's only, I think, when you look back, if you kind of look back and you sort of get the binoculars out and you look back 10 years earlier, and I do sometimes put myself in those shoes, and I think, wow, like if I could sort of see myself, and I think that actually really helps, because sometimes like everybody, when you kind of at the desk trying to write, there are good days and bad days in writing. And on those bad days, the thing that always helps me is to think back to kind of 10 years ago, when no matter how difficult I find in the writing that day, I would have loved to be in this position, to just know that this is where I would be. I would have been thrilled. And I can still conjure that up, and still generate that feeling. So yeah, I draw on that quite a lot, actually.
That is a fantastic answer to that question. And and it also serves as a great holder to the mark, that if you could go back and do the metaphorical 10-year chat with Jane Harper of 10 years ago, being like, don't worry, you're going to make it, you're going to be okay. It also just would set the standard for you to push through those tough days that we all have when you're in the writing process, and go, there'll be a good story at the end of this if you keep pushing through. That's a great answer to that question.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it is because I think as well, I do remember, like we were saying, 10 years feels like it's gone in the blink of an eye. So I do remember so clearly what it's like to be not even a debut author, like an aspiring debut author. And I remember kind of working so clearly on the dry. I can remember everything about the process of writing that book, and working full time at the same time, having no expectation it was going to get published. And then that moment when the door cracked open, and I honestly thought it was like, this is actually going to happen. I really think this is really going to be published. And it was like, the closest I can describe it is like, when you're a kid, that kind of Christmas morning feeling, when it's just you wake up and everything is there and is right with the world, and you got this whole glorious kind of magical moment. And that is what it was like on a kind of 2:00 on a Wednesday afternoon or something. So yeah, it's still a very, very vivid memory for me.
Absolutely. And the good part is it's also continued over to your standalone stories, which we'll jump over into now. We'll kind of start with The Lost Man, which we were talking about just before I started recording, is the last one I got to in your series. I've kind of done your entire bibliography kind of out of order, but I think it's become one of my favorites, funnily enough. Even though maybe it's because it's still fresh in the memory as well. But the fact that you've set this one in the outback, and while of course Jane has her color palette, we've obviously been touching on with the Aaron Falk series, but another reason probably why I like The Lost Man a little bit is that it's in an environment that's kind of more within the psyche. When people think of Australian stories, it's a trope-laden environment of the outback, and I mean, I was immediately drawn to the likes of other great Australian literature like Wake in Fright by Kenneth Cook, and also the subsequent 1971 portrayal of the film, which kind of, with its portrayal of isolation and that environment and that blokey world that's filled with booze and dust and violence and regret as well. We talked about the impact of setting on character, but I think the last kind of key crux that really sits well within the Jane Harper palette is the themes that you discuss, which comes through in this story. You always explore them so well. They dovetail in and determine that setting as well. And The Lost Man, this is a story about guilt and family frustration. It's about isolation with Nathan and Cameron, as well as the Bright family. There's themes of family and trauma that are quite common through your stories. And I just want to ask, why does that fascinate you so much, particularly in contrast with landscape?
Yeah, I mean, look, I loved writing The Lost Man. It's actually quite a lot of people's favorite. Like, they sort of it's one that gets mentioned quite a lot. And I have to say, I really loved writing this one, and the research was so interesting. I went out to Birdsville in Queensland, spent a little bit of time out there, just absorbing it all and speaking to people who lived in these really isolated, homesteads. About all the challenges and mental and physical and financial often that they face, and it was a really interesting story for me to write. I think this one has a real special place in my heart, because I think this was the first standalone, and I think I discovered how much I love writing standalones. Like, I love Aaron Falk. I really have got a lot out of him, but when you do have a recurring character, you are kind of tied to the tied to them. You have to kind of respect the story that's come before and where they are at, and the kind of character you built. Whereas with standalones, it's all open, you know, and you can do anything and you set it anywhere, and have anybody you need to tell the story. And I think that's why The Lost Man, the setting was such a great one to set it in that kind of real remote outback. And it was kind of, I sort of sense when I was writing it, I guess it's always kind of like a locked room mystery, in that there's people who are there's a few people who are there, so they're not literally obviously in a locked room. They're quite the opposite, really. They're very, very very, very open landscape, but they're forced together by that landscape to kind of have these interactions and let this mystery unravel.
Yeah, I'm so glad that this story has a lovely place in your heart. It's that there's something special to it. I will say off the bat, Nathan is a great character. In this story,
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, Nathan's the main character. He was sort of really the driving force behind the book. Like you know, it was one of those people sometimes ask me like, how long did the books kind of stay with you after you finish writing them? And it sort of depends a bit. I mean, sometimes, you know, you do sort of move on because, you know, I'm thinking about the next one. But I have to say, Nathan the Lost Man stayed with me for years. You know, it was really, I have whole elaborate kind of like after stories, like, that, you know, I would never write, but just sort of almost like for closure for myself in terms of what happens next, you know, in terms of like him and the you know, the people around him and things. He really, really lingered, I think, for me for quite a long time.
Wow, why do you think that's the case? Is it just that creative headspace that you found yourself in that led to the creation of him? Like, I'm curious, like compared to someone like say Aaron or you know, any of the characters like Kieran and the Survivors. Like, why Nathan of all people?
Why him? Yeah, you know, and I don't really. Yes, it's a good question, because it is more so than possibly the others. And I don't know if it was just maybe a bit of a perfect storm of the fact that it was this first standalone. So the book was entirely kind of built around him. So he was a completely fresh character that I had to kind of build from the ground with a bit more experience as an author. So maybe he felt fully fleshed to me earlier in the process than possibly Aaron Falk did, because in my debut, I was really finding my way, and it was maybe a slightly slower process in terms of getting him to become a believable three-dimensional kind of person in my mind, whereas Nathan was possibly more fully formed straight away. I think The Lost Man is actually quite an emotional story. I think it's yes. a mystery, but I think it's very emotionally driven. And I really felt for him. I think I really sort of, when I was writing him, I really kind of, you know, wanted to sort of give him a break at times, you know, and maybe it was that as well. I think just I did really feel quite a connection with what he was going through, and you know, and then I think I don't know, and then maybe just the landscape, but you know, he is sort of so isolated a lot of the time. Again, I probably just felt a little bit sorry for him. I wanted to make sure he was okay. Yeah, so but then why him more than say the others? They all go through stuff, and they all have, you know, they all have their own challenges in the books, don't they?
Yeah, they do. You're absolutely wrong. Like, during this story, I was amazed at how much hatred and resentment could be visited upon a man who seems to be such an uncomplicated study in kindness and being selfless. Of course, as the story progresses and he sets out to find answers about his brother's death, it becomes much more complicated. But yeah, I do feel like that. I did find myself really in his corner as a result of that, which maybe it makes it a bit more potent there. And I think obviously coming off the back of doing Aaron, maybe it was just you were in that writer mindset. It kind of flowed. You had the miles under the belt with Nathan, which really felt great. There's a great comment on Goodreads from a reviewer, Chai, who kind of summed up I was trying to think about a way to sum up the themes and story of The Lost Man, and Chai summarized it better than I ever could on Goodreads, which was, quote, "The story lets you decide for yourself if the past sets in stone the present," which I thought was perfect. So poignant. Yeah, so
that's
poignant. Nailed it.
It is. I actually, that is a really, really great way of like summing it up. Well done to that reviewer.
Yeah, and forgiveness kind of also feels like there's an element of forgiveness in there, and forgiveness also kind of feels like a major part of the Survivors too. Which, you know, as mentioned, this was my first introduction to you when we first met. when you came to sign it. I don't know how many thousand copies you signed at Booktopia in 2020, but you take us in The Survivors to the quieter part of Australia, the Apple Isle, to Tasmania. This is a place that often is described as a cocoon. It's a very insular world that we find. And Kieran, our narrator, she deals with guilt not just for the events of the eponymous of kind of the storm in this story that kind of comes on in the past, but also that his parents, who were broken by said event that happened in this story, were kind of left behind and really struggled to move on in this story. It feels like a bit more of a time capsule. But what I love through Kieran is we have the sadness of this lost place, but then also you have your interactions with Ash and Sean and Olivia at Surf and Turf, and there's still also joy there too. Talk to me about identity in such an insular place with The Survivors, because all of these characters, as well, there is joy, but there's also sadness, there's melancholy, and they're all dealing with their own failures, regrets, sadnesses, troubles. It's one of the things I love about this book.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of being an author is you get to write books exactly pitched to where you would like to be as a reader. And I think I like books that have a bit of a mystery and a bit of a the characters going through sort of an emotional kind of journey that they're trying to resolve. But I do like a resolution in terms of not just kind of who done it, but a bit of an emotional resolution as well, where not sort of I really hope not as kind of twee as like just everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow. But I do like it when there is a bit of redemption and there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because I think as a reader it can be quite one note when someone is just going through trauma after trauma after trauma, and there's never any kind of light in it, and it just becomes, rather than having an emotional heft, it actually just becomes, for me as a reader, a little bit boring, because there's no there's no variation in it. So I do like to have kind of moments of levity and a little bit of a glimpse of kind of what happiness could be. So in Survivors, that was very much sort of the I think the aim for that one as well. They've as a community, and certainly as Kieran for his immediate family, they've gone through a really traumatic event involving the drowning of two men and the disappearance of a girl, and and then the way they sort of are trying to kind of cope with that in their own way was sort of the crux of the story. But I did want to have that sort of glimmer of hope and glimmer of resolution. So it's not just a really sad trudge through someone's very challenging time.
I'm particularly glad that this story, more than some of the others, got adapted into a series, because the scope of that is so much bigger to focus on. Was it out of talk about that experience of kind of seeing your baby go through colors, go through a different set of clothes, go out into the world, end up as a mini series on Netflix? You're racking up all of the different adaptations.
It's been great to see the adaptations, and I really enjoyed the Netflix adaptation. I think the first thing I sort of tried to do is I really I'm at the point where I don't see it as my baby anymore when it goes out, because I feel like I could never hand my baby over. It's got to be someone else's baby that looks a bit like my baby. So and so I kind of can enjoy them from arm's length, and see the adaptations kind of companion pieces. And my only real kind of hope for them is that they capture the books in a way that readers will be happy with. So ideally, readers who have enjoyed the books will see them as bringing to the screen those elements that they connected with and enjoyed in the books. And also people who haven't read the books will watch them and maybe be tempted then to read the books and find that the books are in a similar vein. So that's really kind of what I want from the series. And beyond that, I'm happy for them to kind of create what they see their vision come to life, really, because it is their creative projects. It is great though, because it does it's really fun. It's really fun to kind of see these stories be told in a different and new way. Like I never get that fresh experience with the books because I'm so close to them, and so it is a really fun, fresh way to kind of enjoy the stories, and it is really so lovely, I think, to see the way readers have embraced them and see that they have also enjoyed them, and it has brought fresh eyes to the books as well, which is always great.
No spoilers on the ending of this particular book. The theme of guilt over the past and moving on comes through again in this particular story, and there's a heartbreaking but also very beautiful ending to the survivors. And I kind of want to ask, because you sit with these themes a lot, you discuss these themes a lot when we get into your brand new book in a second, that also kind of comes through. What is writing and focusing on these stories and themes, sitting with them across many books, what has it taught you about grief and memory, whether it be in the literary sense or even personally for Jane?
I think the thing that has really struck me over all of the books is how universal the emotions of grief and regrets and well, maybe those two in chief, that how universal they are, because they are themes I revisit a lot. I think I find them quite personally interesting. I think that maybe goes back to my journalism days when I was on a newspaper, and I will quite often interview people who maybe gone through something traumatic, and the thing that sort of stays with me even years later is how long after the event the effects linger, and sometimes it's physical and sometimes it's kind of in their lifestyle, but often it is just in that kind of the trauma of like looking back and the questions about what if and what could I have done and what should I have done maybe, and how that's going to then color their lives going forward. And I've always found that interesting is probably not the right word. I think that was emotionally impactful for me, and that's probably something that's really brought into all the books. And then it's quite interesting how the books are set, all of them really in quite I guess extreme locations. I mean, the vineyard in South Australia is not particularly extreme, but they're quite unusual. I mean, a lot of people, readers around the world, very few people live or work in these locations, particularly outside Australia. And it's always interesting to me, though, how when readers find the characters resonate with them, despite the fact that their lives are so different superficially, the emotional impact of what they've gone through is something that is so relatable, really, almost regardless of where you live or what your lifestyle is like.
That's a great answer to that question, and that's kind of similar. When I was thinking about this myself, I just thought the great lesson I think that comes from this and from all of these stories is, as much as it can feel like your specific grief and trauma that you as a person or an individual or character in this story can feel like it's all encompassing, all locked around yourself, it's amazing how universal that experience is when you have the chance to look beyond and see what other people are dealing with. Which I think is one of the most wonderful elements that kind of comes through here, is that everyone has their troubles, everyone has their issues, everyone has their problems. And even if it can feel overwhelming on the self, sometimes the chance to actually, it just reminded me of the need of, you should always never be afraid to reach out, as terrifying and as vulnerable that can potentially be, because everyone can hurt and go through those experiences. And the more you realize it's more of a universal experience, as much as it feels like an insular one, which I think is so valuable for all of these stories.
And that's why I think it's so important as well to have those elements of light and redemption and things in the books, because even as I get older, things usually work out. When you're younger, and the world seems so big and so encompassing, and it feels like what you're going through now is it, and that's what you're going to go through forever. And it's just not the case. Like things, absolutely, some things kind of can linger, and they do have long lasting impacts. But in the long run, things tend to even out, and I think it's really important, especially for like young people to know. But I think older people, we've all experienced that, and you do, if you just kind of hang on and you reach out and just push through things, that redemption does come, and the happiness returns, and things balance out, and it's just that question of just finding your way through the forest really to the other side.
Absolutely. And I think it's been a long journey. We've dived through so many books, and I think now it's finally time to come to the new baby, to Last One Out. And normally, in this series, I usually kind of like to kick off discussion about it by doing an elevator pitch. And because this one is not out in the world, I can finally do that, because a lot of people don't know what this book is about. I brushed through it while camping over the weekend. So now I'm in an elevator. You've come in. You have to pitch this book to me. We're going up. What is Last One Out about?
Nick, I've got a great book for you here. I've got a great idea for you here. So Last One Out is so it's an Australian mystery. And I'll tell you what, if you like Jane Harper's other books, you'll love this one. So that's probably my main pitch. I think, look, it's very similar in tone and feel to the others. It's an Australian mystery. It's this one is set in rural New South Wales, in a small community that used to be beautiful, and it used to be beloved by the residents. They grew up there, they raised their kids there. There's a real tight community feel. And then some years earlier, a big mining operation moved in several kilometres down the road, and for various kind of reasons, it is just decimated the town. And we meet this community when it is an absolute shadow of its former self. It's completely skeletal. Buildings are abandoned. The shops are shut. Hardly anyone lives there, except for a few core people who are hanging on for kind of various reasons of their own. And the book follows a woman called Rose Crowley, who is who has lived there for a long time. She raised her family there, but no longer lives there. But she returns each year on the anniversary of the date that her 21-year-old son went missing on the night before his birthday, really to keep his memory alive, and sort of try and sort of reconnect with the memory of him in some way. So that's Last One Out. Nick, I hope you've bought my pitch. I hope your commissioners give the green light to go ahead.
Ding! We've arrived. It's the elevator lift is done. I'll first of all say congratulations on another wonderful book. And first off the bat, you should be really, really proud of it. Because this might be up there. We were literally talking about beforehand. This might be up there on a personal level with me, with one of my absolute favorites that you've done.
Thanks,
we were talking about it beforehand, and I think the reason why I liked it, what exactly did that kind of drove me into it. And I mean, first of all, we've talked about it a few times, but I always like to start with setting. And my geography brain kicked in hard, because unlike the impact of a land that unlike previous stories where you see the impact of Australia and the land on particular people and how it dovetails into their own stories, maybe what I really liked about this one, kind of in a similar way to that connection, that more personal connection I felt with The Dry, you present a land divided in Last One Out. Carillon Ridge, as you kind of alluded to, it's a dying town. The mining company's operating on its borders. The locals being forced out. There's industrial noise going. There's thick layers of dust everywhere. It's a land under attack by a slow ebbing presence, and we notice the effects that mining has on these people, which ties up nicely with many, many more themes of grief in here. Grief comes in many forms. It's not just the people in this dying town, but also, as you kind of alluded to with Roe, returning to this town for the annual memorial of her son's disappearance. I immediately just thought of places I've traveled to where this is real. This is not fiction. There are moments there where I just thought to myself, this is 110% real. I thought of places like Narrandera in New South Wales. I thought of places like in the WA wheat belt, like Kalgoorlie, where you kind of travel to that place and you see places, towns hanging on for dear life. Out of curiosity, what was the assembly like the Last One Out? Because it's very poignant, and it was something that I just thought to myself as I was reading this. A lot. This isn't fiction. A lot of Aussies are going to be looking at this and saying, "This is what it's like in real life."
I absolutely agree. I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to look hard at all to find a town exactly like this. I do always like to fictionalize the places in the books, so they are like a completely kind of fictional amalgamation of different elements, but hopefully brought together in a way that people read them and feel like, I've been somewhere just like that. I absolutely recognize what these people are going through. And I think it's funny because the last one out, the idea for this, the idea that became this book, I actually sort of came to me quite a few years ago when I read a story about a town that had basically gone through something similar, and there were a handful of residents kind of really trying to sort of keep it going and keep it alive. But everything they loved about it had gone, and it's interesting. That was several years ago, and now it's still even more. Today we can absolutely find even more examples of that. And I think touching on what we were discussing before about emotion being universal. Again, I think absolutely there's a lot of people in Australia who've sadly experienced something like this. But even on a different scale, we've all had that kind of experience of maybe going back to visit, our childhood house, or an old neighborhood, or somewhere that we used to love going to, and finding that it's not what it was. And that sadness where you realize it's something that has actually kind of gone forever, really, and you've got to try to find a way to make peace with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that is such a good kind of a hidden thing. I'll try to be as spoiler-free as I can with this story, because long and the short of it, readers, go and read it. Listeners, go and read this book. It's amazing. There's one great element that also really comes into this story, and it was kind of present a little bit in the likes of Force of Nature with Daniel, and the kind of the whole money laundering element of that story that was kind of happening in the background, but kind of that of greed. There's a bit more of an element of story of greed in this here, and what humans will do, because there's obviously this encroaching mind that's I often kind of viewed it and felt it like, this mining operation was getting so intensive and being prioritized over something that seems of increasing value: family, happiness, life. And this probably is a small spoiler, but it kind of is alluded to a lot. It's early on. Sam, the son in question, was working on a thesis about the town's response to the intrusion of the mine before he suddenly what happened to him, which we'll keep spoiler free. But yes,
I think you're absolutely right, because I think that question of like, how far will people go or not go to kind of protect their way of life in their community. And I think it's interesting that you refer to it as greed, because I see that, but when I was writing it, I thought of it more as realism, because there's this sense where the people in this community, they know there's this big industrial operation opening up, right on their doorsteps, essentially, and there will be financial offers made for land and homes. And the question is, who is going to take it? And will it be you? And, ideally we all like to think, I would never, no, like I would absolutely prioritize, my neighbors and my community, my family and my way of life above any kind of dollar offer. But the fact is, most of us would take it. And that is what's happened in this story, because, in reality, we all have bills to pay and mortgages, and you need somewhere to live and you need somewhere to educate your children. And so the financial offer, it's not, it becomes a case where it doesn't make sense to turn it down, and then it becomes like a domino effect, because the more people who take it, the more you have to take it. But then the incentive for the mine to offer money decreases, because they don't need your participation as much anymore. So it's this real double-edged sword that I think drives a wedge right through the community. And by the time we meet the town and these people, that wedge is like a chasm, and there's a real divide between those who left and those who stayed. And then it's almost impossible for people, I think, to see other people's point of view at times, which is quite sad, because I think really everybody in the story, and even the people we don't really see, with the people who alluded to who have really gone, I hope you can kind of to some degree understand their motivations, because it is just quite a human reaction, I think.
Yeah, that's a much better way to describe it. Kind of realism or prioritization of one at the expense of the self, or kind of like that. What I think in this story more than other does is that you really turn the landscape, more than any other story that you've written, into, off the back of this, into a charged, brutal, I don't want to say battleground, but a place of conflict. And it's a place where scars exist in the past through flashbacks, but they're also there in real time. And it's a place where memories and decisions and processes that were decided by people, the conflict and the impact are still playing out, which I think makes it a much more charged story. Probably it's the reason why I liked it, so why I really kind of gravitated towards it and really, really enjoyed it.
Like the physicality of the impact of having a big industrial operation open up next to your residential home was quite profound in terms of the research. You know, the one of the things that came up time and time again was the noise. The kind of in the book, there's this kind of sort of relentless kind of grinding and industrial noise that just is night and day, 24/7. And you almost notice it more when it stops because you know then it's this sort of strange silence, and that was something that really I think came up again, you know, often in terms of making things somewhere really unbearable to live, and the impacts on the air and the dust and all kinds of things. So those are all kind of elements that I wanted to bring in that made, it's not just like an emotionally difficult place for our characters to be. It's actually like quite physically hard to be there as well.
It's an amazing book. I think you should be really, really proud of this one, and I think that
thank you.
Readers and fans are going to really like this one. I think there's a real special element and things that you touch on there that feels like it opens so many more doors to the Jane Harper palette, which I really, really am excited about. And it's such a silly question to ask, but I often like to ask authors about it after the end of this series, because obviously you're in the middle of this beautiful book. You're in the middle of kind of touring this one. You're about to go out on tour and do all of that. What's cooking in the head of Jane Harper next, out of curiosity? Is there a story? Another one?
Yeah, do you know, it's funny actually how often ideas come right at a time when you've just finished another book. You feel like, this is time I can just relax out and just watching TV and not think about things for a while. But I think sometimes you're in that zone of you've been working that creative zone for quite a long time, and then the pressure of that book is gone. That book is gone. So the Princess is done now, but your mind's still kind of in that space. And quite often I do get new ideas quite quickly after completing a book. So I do have it. Yeah. So look, I do have another idea. Look, I won't say too much about it because it's very early. I'm still kind of developing. I'm not, if I say I'm not even quite sure who done it yet. So that's how early it is, but I have got a good idea for kind of a bit of a scenario, which I think would play well. And look, it would be another Australian standalone mystery with a few twists and turns. So we'll see how that one plays out anyway.
We've gone through all of your amazing bibliography. We've come to the end here, and now there's nothing left to do but finish off with what we usually do with this format, which is a rapid-fire question part of the date, where I basically fling a bunch of questions at you, and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. Jane, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, brilliant. Let's do it. First up, we'll talk literary taste. Of course, you'd be reading in addition to writing, and the first one is, what's your favourite book that you've read over the last 12 months?
Oh, look, so quite recently, actually very recently, so Sally Hepworth has a new book out called Mad Mabel, which I really love. It's brand new, and I think if you know Sally's books, you'll absolutely love this one. It's a really fun story about quite a moving story actually as well, about a pensioner with a very dark past. So yeah, Mad Mabel by Sally Hepworth.
Great answer. I love Sally's books. They're such fantastic explorations and great stories. Out of curiosity, what is your favorite debut novel that you've ever read?
So I have two, actually, if that's okay. One is Watermelon by Marion Keyes, because I think she burst onto the scene with that book. I would say fully formed. It has everything that has made her career so successful 30 million books later. It has the humor, the warmth. It introduces to the Walsh sisters, who have been such a joy for I think about seven books about them now. What a way to kind of introduce your writing to the world, and it still stands the test of time, and I still find it so engaging and funny. And then the second one, for a similar reason, is Lee Child's Killing Floor, which is his first Jack Reacher novel, which has one of the best opening chapters I've ever read. It's so suspenseful. It introduces the character like right off the bat. Like there's a great line in there where he says something like, you know, he like his cops burst into a diner and accuse him of like, you know, like murdering someone in his town, and he sort of calmly like says, you know, well, you know, I haven't I didn't kill anyone. Not today, at least not here, or something like that. Which is absolutely like this immediately you're like, oh my god, this character is so great. And I think both of those debuts are chosen because the authors just burst onto the scene with these fantastic books, and then absolutely capitalized that and ran with the talent and the ideas, and just gave us these great novels that we've all enjoyed for so many years since.
That's a fantastic answers to those questions. Just you always kind of you look at those amazing authors, and you always like to think, you know, where did they come from? And usually, like that first debut just hit the ground running. Fantastic picks on Mary Keys and Lee Child. Do you have a favorite word?
Favorite word? Do you know what? This is so silly. So it's not my favorite word, but there are quite a few words that I overuse in the drafts of my books that then I go through. So I don't think they're not my favorite, but they tend to creep in so much to the point where now I have a list of them, and I go through and I weed them out, and then the editor's notes look out for them. There's a few of them. There's dark, people's eyes flick. There's eyes flick to something else. There's people blink in surprise. There's all these like little like things that and I think it's when I'm kind of putting the draft down, I almost need the kind of the comfort lines that I can just go back to, okay, like his eyes flick to the clue, you know, and I'll sort it out later. So yeah, they're not my favorites, but I seem to love them because I overuse them all the time.
It's so funny. This question often devolves into what are the words that I most overused in my first draft, which I think is so funny. When I was chatting with Holden Shepherd, he was like, mate, just get it out. Just like if you have to overuse the words, use them. Just because you're getting that first draft out on the page. That's what an editor is for, to play with and mess around with it a little bit.
That's what the editing process is for, and that's why if you're listening to this and you're trying to write your debut novel, don't worry about it. Like just say it. Just get it on the page. You can do a find and replace later, and every time you've used the word dark, you can replace it with gloomy, misty, whatever you want. Like you can use that thesaurus later. Just use the word dark now. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking a lot about themes and characters and setting a lot in this episode. But I mean, obviously, there's the crime element to your stories, which people love so much. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of great crime writers?
Oh yeah, good question. Because there's so many out there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, does like Lee Child, does he count? Because I mean, is he more action? But I do think, I mean, I think in terms of the way, the pacing, the questions that are posed kind of throughout the books, that sense of like keeping you turning the pages. There's I mean, there's all the classic ones. We all know. There's who else is really good? I mean, more recently. I mean, Benjamin Stevenson, I think, is doing really interesting things with kind of reinventing, this kind of classic crime film, but with like in a modern way, very funny. His kind of, everyone in my family's killed someone is the first one that kind of series. Well worth discovering if anybody hasn't. Then also Kate Mildenhall, who has written several books, and then most recently her new one, which is it was so great. I completely nailed it, called The Hiding Place. Is a crime novel, which is very unusual for her because she sort of changes genre with every book, and she has nailed this. Like it was such a page turner. I just rattled through it like so fast because it's just this breathless kind of unspooling of this kind of everything sort of going wrong, and how is it going to resolve? And so Kate Mildenhall's The Hiding Place was a really great example. So I mean, there's so many. I mean, anything with a bit of mystery can be done so well, and there's so many different ways. I think that's what I love about the crime and mystery genre. It's just so broad.
That's a good answer. I do like that. I appreciate that like you kind of picked a few more like current upgoing Australian authors. There's so many great ones out there who are absolutely nailing crime and nailing that feeling element to it. I'll throw in as well off the back of it. I mean, it's not necessarily crime so much, but more action and thriller. the new Matt Rogers book, The Forsaken. I had the chance to chat with him on the show, and it's a bit more commercial compared to other books out there, but just his nature and his prolific approach. He'd published 30 books via custom publishing route before he got this debut going, and I was like, wow, how did you do that? You could tell.
Good for him. And again, that it just shows the power of persistence, in terms of I mean, imagine if he'd given up on like book 27 on, so I mean, that is a real success story. Like, that's such a great, I'll definitely check that one out in that case. Cause if you recommend it, and yeah, well done. I think well done for anybody who honestly persists to the point where you actually get your book published, because it is a long road, and it is, what a reward though. It's so worth doing.
It's definitely much more action than sort of mystery, and it's kind of got political elements and ramifications. But I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was amazing fun. Off the back of that, do you have a favorite crime trope that you're a sucker for?
I do like a bit of a double mystery. I do like a kind of a mystery that's kind of unfolding now, but then like a secret from the past. And I particularly like it when that secret from the past impacts the mystery playing out in the present day timeline. So yeah, probably a double mystery is my favorite.
Oh, love it. Yeah, it is good when there's kind of that kind of weaving and dovetailing that sort of happens. Before you became an author, you lived in Hampshire, you studied English and history at the University of Kent in Canterbury. Is there a lesson from writing over the last 10 years that you wish you could go back and tell your younger self when she was studying in Canterbury?
Yeah, I think, I'm actually going to steal a lesson from there's an author called Amy Lovett, who is who is an Australian author, and she writes about kind of more like literary fiction, but she also teaches writing. And I heard her give what I would say was the best advice I've heard for kind of aspiring authors, because it was exactly what held me back. And she says that she often sees people who want to be authors, but they want someone to kind of like pick them out of a crowd and say, I believe in you, and you could be an author, and I think you could do it. Just, if you have a go, I'm sure you could make it, and you could do it. And they want that kind of external validation before they feel they can write something. And that was exactly, I think, what held me back. I needed someone to believe in me, but that never happens when you're, starting out, because nobody really knows you're working on anything. You have to believe in yourself without anybody else really believing you, which is it's a really hard thing to do. And I think that holds back so many people. And I think if you could just let go of that thing that someone is going to kind of pluck you from the crowd and say, you know what, I can just see that you're going to be a great writer. Say it to yourself if you need to, like, you just have to kind of do it. You have to sort of take that leap without really knowing if the safety net's going to be there, and just trust it will be, and trust that it will work out. So that's probably the best advice that I think I wish I'd heard in my 20s.
That is a fantastic answer to that question. I also appreciate you shouting out Amy Lovett, who I've had her on the show when we talked about Mistakes and Other Lovers, her debut.
Yes, great book.
Works at the Newcastle Writers Festival and Novocastrian Born and Bred as well. So, and her new book's out as well, which is very, very good. I've been spotting it all over the place at the moment, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Big Feelings. It is. Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah, it's a really good it's a really good read, and she's a very smart woman. So, when I heard her say that, I just thought, I wish someone had said that to me when I was 21.
Out of curiosity, off the back of that, which do you prefer, the country or the city?
Well, I live in the city. I guess I live in the suburbs. So I do, I do like the convenience of like city living. However, I think there's nowhere, as an author, there's nowhere better to set a book, as you can probably tell from like the 6 that I've written, than some sort of like isolated remote location. So professionally, I love a good isolated setting. But personally, I do like being able to kind of pop down the shops when I need something.
Which is one part, physical area or place in Australia that you think is underrepresented in our literature, or that you might want to set a story?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if I'm not sure if there's anywhere, because I mean, there's so many the thing is about Australia, it's so diverse, obviously, and there's so much to it. You know, but then everywhere you think of, there are sort of probably great books that have touched on it. It's hard to think of anywhere. I did think for a while that I thought the Garn, the train, the cross-country train, was a great setting. And I was sort of toying with the idea of doing some of that. And then Benjamin Stevenson beat me to it and wrote a book called Everyone in This Train is a Suspect a couple of years ago now. And so I had to slightly shelve that idea. Although, I mean, he wouldn't be the first one by a long stretch. But I thought there was maybe some rope left in that one. But I think maybe he's used that up for now with that really excellent book. So yeah, I don't know. Look, if I come across somewhere new, I think I'd probably keep it a secret and use it for myself. Yeah.
Well, I can answer this question myself a little bit, partly because I had one of my brothers. He went and did about 10 or 11 years ago, did a movie and did the soundtrack for a movie up in the Pilbara, and it was kind of an acoustic sort of album thing. And he said, people asked him about what the experience was writing up there, and he said the actual environment, the music just flowed out of him, which was just like he didn't really write. He just felt like I was just up there having a great time. And it was the environment that generated the music, which I thought was really interesting. It made me go, God, there should be more stories kind of up there in the north of WA and Northern Territory. That was and beyond the context of like Darwin and the outback further to the south. There's something there that is really, really cool. But maybe a story for me in the future or for yourself. But
that's right. Yeah, you should write that one down. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I have been thinking about doing like a story up there. I found myself in Darwin and kind of up there a few years ago, and funnily enough, did the GAN. So it was a hell of a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a very evocative environment. Love it. If you could team up with one other Australian crime writer and do a series, or even like an action writer, any writer in Australia, who would it be?
Yeah, good question. I might go back to my good friend Sally Hepworth, who I admire very much. I think she'd be a lot of fun to work with. I really like her books. I think she also would bring elements to it that I don't particularly have in my books. Like she's very good at kind of capturing that domestic sort of situation, whereas I'm kind of more sort of remote setting. And I wonder if maybe we could marry the two and have kind of, I could sort of do the bigger picture setting and she could do the more kind of nitty gritty kind of, capturing that everyday way things that she does so well. So yeah, like let's I think me and her could be a good team.
Final question of both this episode and of the year. Are you happy?
You know what, Nick, I'm so happy. And I'm so happy because I'm really, really lucky to have such a great career. I think that lets me do, it lets me, write what I want creatively. It gives me opportunities to meet people, gives me opportunities to kind of do things like this, like chat with you on like fun podcasts. It gets me opportunities to kind of come face to face with readers who have supported me and booksellers and librarians who have really been so instrumental in kind of making my books what they are. And they sort of say happiness is to be found, I think, in being grateful for what you have. And I am so grateful for everything that these books have given me, and not just the books, but the readers and people like you and the booksellers and librarians who supported them. And like I said, if I could go back 10 years and look ahead, I would just be beside myself with joy.
That is a fantastic answer to that question. And it's great that these incredible books have opened you to the whole crazy, amazing and wonderful world that is the Australian publishing industry, and how tight-knit and close it all is. I'm really happy because I got to chat to you about your entire career and this amazing new book that's about to come out, last one out, which I'm holding up to the screen. It's there. For everyone listening, you can get a copy of it right now. There's a link in the description. If you can't get a copy, you can also check it out at your local library as well. There is no limit to where you can go and check out this amazing new book, which at the time of us recording, it's about to be out in the world. But when you're listening, it will be out in the world and you can go and check it out. Jane, this has been an absolute joy. I've absolutely loved talking to you about your amazing, incredible career. And I'm so excited for how well this book is going to go and for what comes next. Thank you so much for coming on Debut Revisited. It's been a joy.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to you guys listening as well. It's always so great to be able to have a book listen. It's really, really fun conversation. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Debut Revisited. This will be the final episode of this special mini-series and the final episode of 2025. I would like to take this opportunity to offer a special thank you to all the amazing authors and publishers who helped make this show possible, and a special thank you to Dani V for allowing Date with the Debut to feature on the incredible Words and Nerds channel. Date with the Debut will be taking an extended break, but I'll be back in 2026 for a brand new season with a bunch of new authors and brand new episodes. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and see you in 2026. Date with the Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcast co-production.